Hello, friends. Welcome to the show. It's called Stand to Reason, and your host is Greg Koukl. And I am 1 hour away from my family vacation. I should say the professional part, 1 hour away professionally, because in 1 hour I get to drive home and finish packing, and at dark 30 tomorrow we get on a plane for northern Wisconsin. So I'm a little bit giddy right now, and got a couple of callers on board. That's great. I got some opening remarks, and I just want to move through here and enjoy my last hour of work before I go on vacation. Now, just for the record, I work on my vacation because I can't avoid it. But I'm in Wisconsin, so it just feels different. And I write and I answer emails and I solve problems and whatever. It's just the way life is. It's not a complaint. It's just the way it is. So I don't get to disconnect completely from my labor, as it were. But that's okay, because this is my life. It's not just I don't just have a vocation that I can say, okay, I'm done with that now and I'm getting back to my life. This was my life before I got paid for it. This was my life before Stand to Reason. It was my life because I'm a follower of Christ and I'm seeking to use my gifts in a productive way for the kingdom's sake. That's been from the beginning, since very, very early in my Christian life, which started formally September 28, 1973. And that's not only been my perspective, but it has been the way Christianity has been modeled to be by my mentors and those around me. So I'm not bragging on myself. I'm just saying I got a perspective early on from good instructors that set me straight and got me on a good path and helped establish my values as a Christian. Now, eventually, I started making a living at doing what I do. I thought that would happen a lot sooner than it did. It was like 15 years after I became a Christian that began to happen. But that surprised me. Maybe it wasn't quite that long, but it was at least 10 years, and I thought it was maybe sooner. But that God had some things to do with me before he could entrust me with some of those things, and he's still working on stuff. But in any event, it's I think I'm done with that thought. I'm done with it partly because I can't remember where I was going with it. But that's happening more and more, Amy. I need my cue person here to let me know. Okay, you get it. I want to talk before. I was talking about vacation. Yeah, and so even on vacation, I'm still working, somewhat. But that's okay because it's necessary. I want to talk about why I'm a Christian, just to lead off this segment, and I'm curious if I were to ask you, why do you think I'm a Christian? Just write it down. How do you think I would answer this question, why I am a Christian? Now, I think there's a couple of ways to answer that, depending on the tack that you're taking. But I'm taking a very particular tack and answering it in a very particular way. And this, by the way, has always been the case for me. This isn't my answer I'm going to give you in a moment. Pardon me, is not something that I ended up coming to the conclusion of later on in my Christian life. This is the way it's been for me from the get-go. And this hasn't changed at all. And I think it has served me well in a number of ways, and this is one of the reasons I want to commend it to you. To think about this, because it will serve you well too if you can sink your teeth into it. And you can own it in a certain sense. There is only one reason why anyone should be a Christian. And that reason is because Christianity, as it describes the nature of the world, is accurate and true. I'm a Christian because it's true. Now, qualification, or at least clarification. When I say true, I mean true to the way the world actually is. I don't mean true for me. I don't mean my truth. I am specifically stating it contrary to that. I mean true in the classical sense of the word truth, that your belief matches the way the world actually is, and that's what makes it true. If you say that it is, and it is, or say that it isn't, and it isn't, that's true. Now, that's the way Aristotle put it, but it's pretty straightforward. That's what we all mean almost all the time when we use the word truth or some derivative. It's the garden variety definition. Philosophers call it truth as correspondence, but you don't need to remember that. What they mean is that your claim corresponds to the way the world actually is. Okay? So if I say, you know, I'm going to have pizza tonight, and that statement is true, it's only true because I am going to a pizzeria tonight and ordering pizza for dinner and eating it with my family. And if I don't do that, or I don't intend to, and I say I do, then my statement is not true, it's false. So this is nothing fancy about this. Unfortunately, nowadays, you've got to make this point clear so people don't misunderstand it, because so much of what people say is true has nothing to do with the outside world. Now, I mentioned this is the garden variety definition of truth, and I agree with that. That is, this is what people mean most of the time when they are talking in general about things being true, but when they're guarding philosophical turf, like moral turf especially, they monkey with the definitions and they talk about my truth and your truth. That would be with moral truth or with religious truth. Oh, that's your truth. That's not my truth. You have your truth, I have my truth. Both of our truths are equally true, even though they're opposite views, right, on that view. Because now they're talking relativistically, okay? Now, here's the reason why, actually there's a substantive reason and there's a practical reason why this answer to the question why I am a Christian is so important, okay? Because some things, here's the substantive reason, certain things you better get right because the consequences are so weighty, all right? You better get it right. You better get it right to reality. You can't just let your imagination go when your feelings go. I'm driving my car. I'm going to go, 150 miles an hour, feels good. I'm going to close my eyes and just feel the wind in my hair. Well, you're going to die if you do that because the way the world is actually constructed, you do that following your feelings, you're going to get killed. Okay? And so when it comes to weighty concerns, and there are no more weighty concerns than those concerns that have to do with forever and ever. And don't ask me why they throw that extra word in there, but God did it, so I'm doing it. Forever and ever. Right? To infinity and beyond, to quote Buzz Lightyear. These things that we are talking about are weighty, and they are the most weighty things about the nature of the world out there, the real world, reality. That's the thing that injures you when you don't take it seriously, when you bump into it, right? These things are important. That means we better be careful to get these things right in the objective sense. There's other things we can fiddle around with our feelings. It's okay, because that's the kind of thing it is. But those subjectively oriented kinds of things, fine. But when it comes to things that really matter, you got to get it right. And so this is why we spend our time thinking about the issues pertaining to the weighty matters so that we get it right and we don't get injured as a result. Okay? So there is this substantive rationale for believing in Christianity because it's true. Because if it is true and you believe, that's good. If it is true and you don't, you're in big trouble forever. Okay? But the second thing is more of a practical matter. Notice that my reasons for being a Christian, if I say because it's true to the way the world actually is, and that's the kind of truth I'm talking about, it is not true because of I'm not a Christian because I feel good about Christianity. It's not I'm not a Christian because my family was Christian. I'm not a Christian because I was raised in America. I'm not a Christian for all of these other, because God's a crutch for me and he does something for me and all these other things. Watch this, things about me. If my reasons for being a Christian are reasons that have to do with me, then those are vulnerable to a certain type of attack. As it turns out, I think Christianity is true based on reasons that have absolutely nothing to do with me. I could love it, I could hate it. I could want it, I could not want it. I could be socialized to believe it, I could be socialized not to believe it. Those are irrelevant if this thing, Christianity and its truth, stand on its own apart from me. I could disappear and it would still be what it is. That's what I'm talking about. Because if my claim that I'm a Christian because I think it's true, and the truth I mean is based on objective reality, things outside of me, I will not be vulnerable to a whole host of objections against Christianity that, amazingly to me, throw many Christians for a big giant loop. So quite a number of years ago, I'd say at least 20, I was down at UCSD, University of California, San Diego. They were having kind of a Christian week. The campus group had put this together, a different lecturer every night. I lectured to a full house in an auditorium on a Wednesday night. Mine was the philosophy lecture, and I talked about relativism since I had written a book on it. But before the event, I was out to dinner with the leadership, campus leadership, and I said, hey, what's the skinny on campus about the Christians? What do people think of the Christians? And they said, well, they think Christians are stupid. And I thought, well, that'll be my opener then. So I was introduced and I stood up and I said amicably to them, I understand that you think Christians are stupid. Well, lots of them are. But lots of non-Christians are stupid too. So I don't know what that gets you. What I'm here to show you tonight is that Christianity is not stupid. Now, do you see what I did there? I was maneuvering to take away an objection that they had that was unrelated to the truthfulness of Christianity, but was just simply a liability that I thought Christians brought to the table. And that became the focus for them. Well, Christians are stupid. Okay, so what? We're not talking about Christians. We're talking about Christianity. Or how about the atheist who says, well, you're a Christian because you were raised in America. If you were raised in Saudi Arabia, you'd be a Muslim. Now, issues of the sovereignty of God aside, I mean, they have a point. And I'm willing to acknowledge it. And my response is, so what? That's actually a tactic. A mini tactic in the new book. So what? So? What does that have to do? That's about me. That's about culture. That's about whatever. It's not about Christianity. That may be an interesting observation on psychology or sociology or something like that, but how does that tell you whether or not the claims of Jesus of Nazareth were true or false? Whether or not Jesus got out of the grave after the third day or not, whether or not God created the universe. I mean, all of those things, it has nothing to do with the objective things. It is an attack on the subjective element. And by the way, I have had a number of Christians who came to me whose convictions were shaken because they realized, yes, if I was born in Saudi Arabia, I probably wouldn't be a Christian. And so they think the atheist has a good point. Well, he does have a good point as far as it goes. It doesn't go very far. In fact, it's self-defeating for the atheist because if the atheist was born in Saudi Arabia, he wouldn't be an atheist. Now, does that tell you anything about the merits of atheism? No. Does it tell you anything about the merits of Christianity versus Islam? No. It doesn't address the issue at all. It's simply an analysis of some individual subjects' cultural, circumstantial situation. But if I believe in Christianity because it's true, in virtue of external objective evidence that stands on its own feet apart from my existence, much less from my feelings or my social upbringing or my emotional needs, God is just a crutch for you. To which I respond, yes, he is a crutch, because injured people need crutches. It's not a liability. It's an acknowledgement of the reality of fallenness. But just because I need God doesn't mean I've invented God. Have I invented God? Maybe, maybe not. That depends on something else beside my felt need. That depends, the answer to that depends on the external evidence. And that's what I go to. Me, I am irrelevant in this equation. So when I say that I'm a Christian because I think it's true objectively based on objective evidence, I have sidestepped all of these more personalized challenges that have nothing to do with the question of whether God exists, whether Jesus lived, whether he died on a cross or rose again from the dead, and all the other things that pertain to the truthfulness of Christianity per se as a worldview. Rescues me from that. It saves me from that difficulty and from that problem. And so you have two reasons why I think that's the way you should approach this question. The first one is because when it comes to substantive issues, you better get it right. Okay? If you don't believe in something that's objectively true, it doesn't go away. Like gravity. If you say, I don't believe in gravity, you're not going to float away. You're going to fall off the roof. Reality is going to have its way. So you better figure out what reality is actually like when it comes to weighty concerns. And nothing is more weighty than spiritual concerns when eternity is in question. And the second reason that you should focus on the fact that the truth is that Christianity is true in the objective sense is it takes you out of the equation entirely. And when you are out of the equation, a whole bunch of challenges against your view based on you are taken out of play as well. I go into more detail in tactics in the chapter on mini tactics, and the tactic there is called the power of so. I should have called it so what. I don't know why. Sometimes you think of these things after it's gone to press. So what? I like that better than so. So what? But the point is, even if the claim is true regarding my subjective situation, even if it is true, I'm a Christian because I was raised in a Christian family, I'm a Christian because I was raised in America, God is a crutch for me, or and on and on and on and on. Christians are stupid and I'm dumb too. All those things could be true. And Christianity could still be true too. They are unrelated to each other. And by adopting this approach, you can keep them distinct as a practical matter, and you have a much better chance of finding out what actually is the case, objectively true, in the process. All right? I'm Greg Koukl here. You're listening to Stand to Reason. All right, back at you here, Greg Koukl, and let's see, back to your calls now. So let's go to Dave in Reno, Nevada, and there's his button. Hey, Dave, welcome.
Hey, Greg, how are you?
Doing good, thank you. I'm getting fired up for the next 40 minutes. My last 40 minutes before my big time up northern Wisconsin.
Well, I hope you enjoy your vacation. I appreciate the time that you're going to give me today.
I'm glad to help out.
Yeah, and you guys have been a big help in the past. I'll echo a previous caller. And because of that, I've been not only a long-time listener, but a long-time strategic partner. So I encourage other people to jump on board with that also. Mm-hmm. So, but anyway, my question today is my wife and I have been dialoguing with, I guess, various sets of LDS missionaries as they, cycle in and out and get transferred and all that.
Yeah.
And we got talking about the Trinity. I actually use some of your guys' resources as far as the deity of Christ case closed,
Right.
And the Trinity a solution, not a problem. We even got them to watch Tim Barnett's Red Pen Logic video
wonderful.
on Jesus praying to himself. So we've had a pretty good discussion, a pretty good back and forth and everything. But I guess what they have left is they talk a lot about John 20:17, where it's Jesus tells Mary, "I'm going to go to your Father and my Father, to your God and my God." And then there's 4 or 5, maybe more, different parts in the New Testament where it talks about the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ.
Right?
Yeah, and and they're. They say, well, if he's the God of Jesus, then Jesus can't be God, and along those lines. And I'm not naive enough to think that if I can just answer this last objection, that they're going to abandon their LDS faith and jump on board with the Trinity and Christianity. But I've been having a hard time figuring this one out, and for one, that bugs me. So I like your help with it.
Sure, glad to help out. And this falls in the category of the broad thing you just mentioned, that the Trinity is a solution, not a problem.
Right.
Because this is a problematic verse when compared to other verses, because there are other verses that call Jesus God, our great God and Savior, Jesus Christ. Okay? And verses like that. And about the deity of Christ case closed, where I developed this very simple idea out of John chapter 1, verse 3. Okay, now Jehovah's Witnesses want to fuss with the first verse. In the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was God. I don't actually know what Mormons do with that, but there it says, the Word was God, and we know the Word is the one became flesh in Jesus. So the Word was God right there, and the third verse says that all things came into being through him, that is the Word, and apart from him nothing came into being that has come into being. In other words, the one called the Word, who became flesh in the person of Jesus of Nazareth, is the one who created everything that was ever created. Now, if the Word created everything that was ever created, and that's John's unmistakable language there in verse 3, then the Word is uncreated. And if the Word is uncreated, then the Word is God, as it says in verse 1. Okay, so here's what I want to say. Here's what I'd want to do. I mean, if I'd be walking through this with with a Mormon. Okay, I got your verse. Jesus says, "My God." Okay, now you guys believe in the Bible, right? Yes, insofar it's properly translated. Okay, I buy that. I'm with you on that, by the way. I don't believe in a book that's not properly translated, so all right. So then I might go to the verse I mentioned where it says, "My God," where Jesus is called God, and we have some verses in that teaching. The Trinity is a solution, not a problem, you can make reference to. And then and I go back even to John 1 and read that closely to them and say, okay, and do the little napkin deal like I do in that illustration in the article, The Deity of Christ Case Closed, which, for the record, the rest of you listening, it's on our website. So it's not a very long article either. So it's a very powerful argument from John chapter 1, verse 3. In fact, it's an ancient argument. I didn't come up with this. It's been around a long time. I came up with the napkin deal. But the to help them to see, well, if the Word is the uncreated creator, then what do we know about the Word? The Word must be God. Okay, so now what we have is a contradiction. Okay, this is what I'm going to want to help them to get to. I'm going to walk them, not an accusatory way, but I'm going to walk them through this. Okay, here it clearly says that the Father is Jesus, God. Okay, and here, that's in John 20. Same author, beginning of the book, John chapter 1, verse 3, all things came into being by or through the Word, and apart from the Word, nothing came into being that has come into being. So the Word is the uncreated creator. The Word is God in John 1, 3, and the Word has a God. I should say, Jesus has a God in chapter 20, verse 17. Do you think, my Mormon friend, that John is contradicting himself? And by the way, John is absolutely thick with divine references. Before Abraham was, I am.
Yeah.
There's another one. So there's a bunch of them like that. In John 5, as long as they're camping in John, John's your friend in this one. John says in John chapter 5, Jesus said, John chapter 5, the Father who, I'm sorry, let me back. This is a longer passage I just want to give you. I have come in my Father's name, verse 43. That's the Father. So both of them are the Father. Oh, well, goodness sake. It's John 5, all right?
Okay.
But I'm in the wrong part of John 5. Okay, it's in the 20s. And basically, Jesus said that the Father has given me authority to raise anybody who I want to raise, so that all may honor the Son just as they honor the Father. So this is a divine claim. How can you have the same honor for the Son as has the Father if the Son is not divine? Okay? And he has given all judgment into his hands. So anyway, you've got a lot of passages that identify the deity of Christ, and you have this one passage that says, okay, Jesus has a Father and a God. All right? So how do we... this is where I'd put it to them. Do you think John is contradicting himself?
Yeah, we actually kind of talked a little bit about that with them. That I asked them if they thought John was schizophrenic, that he would be so clear of the deity of Christ throughout, and then, in chapter 20, make something different.
Sure.
So,
the deity of Christ is a main theme of the Gospel of John. It's why a lot of people don't like the Gospel of John, because he's so rich in these things. Okay, I'm not sure what your Mormon friend said, but there's a problem here. It is a contradiction taken at face value.
Right.
Okay, so if we're going to presume charitably that John is not an idiot and he's not directly contradicting himself in this passage, there's some other nuance here that must be in play. And so I'd ask the question, is there any way out of this? How could Jesus be God and have a God at the same time? Now, there's a simple answer to that, but I want to let them try to figure it out, because we're inviting them to correct what appears to be a contradiction in the writings of a person they believe is writing for God. So if he's writing for God, it can't be contradictory. How are you going to solve this? He is God, he isn't God. He is God, he isn't God. He is God, he isn't God. Or he is God and he has a God. Okay?
Okay.
The solution is the hypostatic union, or the dual nature of Christ. Jesus is both God and man. Jesus is both God and man. Okay, Jesus is on the cross, right? He's dying. One of the things he says on the cross is, I thirst. Is God thirsty? Really, does God get thirsty? No, God doesn't get thirsty. The man Jesus gets thirsty. And so what you have when you read through the Gospels, as you have the God-man, and we know he's God because the text says he's God, and we know he's man because the text says he's man. He was born on Christmas morn, right? So we know that he has a human nature and a divine nature. That's Chalcedonian Christology. That's well-established biblical doctrine, and it's established not 300 or 400 years later, which is Chalcedon, but because of what the text says. This is the way to resolve that. So we have a God-man in Jesus, and so therefore he is going to be speaking sometimes from the perspective of his divinity. Before Abraham was, I am. Remember, they asked him the question, you know Abraham? You're not 40 years old, and you know Abraham? What are they referring to as not 40 years old? His human self. You're right. His human self couldn't know Abraham. It is his divine self that knew Abraham, in which he identifies. Before Abraham was, I am. and they picked up stones to stone him because they knew the claim he was making. So sometimes Jesus makes reference to himself from the perspective of his divine nature, and sometimes the text or Jesus makes reference to Jesus from his human nature. I thirst.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus wept. He was tired, so he sat down. He ate with them. God doesn't need to eat, but Jesus, the human being, does. So Jesus, the human being, is a created human. God is responsible for that human. The human has a God to which he refers.
Makes sense.
This is a way in which Jesus is referring to the Father from the perspective of his humanity. All the other verses refer to him with respects to his divinity, the ones we mentioned. What's amazing to me is that all these other verses they're aware of, but they strain at this one. Oh, he's got a God. That's it. He's a created being. He's got a God. Okay, well, what do you do with all these other verses? I ignore them. That's what they do.
Yeah.
Just whatever. I don't know what to do, but we have a solution that takes all the passages seriously, and that is the Trinity. That you have two persons in question right now, the Father and the Son has two natures. And that he's got a divine nature, he's got a human nature. And some texts refer to one and some texts refer to the other. And guess what? Contradiction disappears. The Trinity is a solution, not a problem.
Yeah.
So, that's the long and short of it. And it's a great explanation, and in fact, it's the only explanation that will get rid of the apparent contradiction. And if you're talking with an atheist, they don't care about that. But if you're talking with the LDS who care about the Bible, well, then you have grounds upon which you can make your argument here. And in the process, do it conversationally using a lot of questions the way I role-played it for you. But that's the way I would pursue. Now, I know that you know this, what I've just said, because you've read the piece that I talked about, the Deity of Christ Case Closed from John chapter 1, and you also are familiar with the teaching that Trinity is a solution, not a problem. And but it's those two things that come together to answer this particular question. So how did the LDS person respond to any of those things that you've said? Were they willing to try to struggle with the apparent contradiction?
I think they struggle with it a little bit, but they really can't admit that the Trinity is a solution, not a problem, because that really messes with their whole worldview on that. So I think they have to keep going back to John 20:17 and the other of our God and Father. They have to go back to those because they really can't admit that they're wrong on it. Well, they did say on on John 20:17 about Jesus saying, "Go to my God and my Father," that that was after Jesus had been raised for the dead, because I brought up that he was speaking from his from his humanity in a lot of this, and they mentioned that even though he hadn't ascended to the Father, he'd been resurrected, so he's not really speaking as a human. I told him I didn't think that was a very good response to it.
Of course he was a human. He was a human being. He was a resurrected human being.
Yeah, standing there talking to Mary Magdalene. Human.
This is a little bit of a philosophical issue here, but being human is what we have as a nature. And if our nature changes, then we are no longer ourselves. Mm-hmm. If Jesus wasn't a human, if he was a human at one point, and then in the future that human is gone, then Jesus is gone. Then Jesus is gone, because Jesus of Nazareth is a human being. And so you can say, no, he's resurrected. When we get resurrected, we'll still be human beings. We'll just be resurrected human beings. We're not going to be some other kind of creature. That's so goofy. But anyway, it's just the irony. I understand that this is a troublesome or an unusual doctrine, the Trinity, but it's the only solution. And it's the
Yeah.
way that the early fathers, etc., resolved these scriptural issues. They had to take the different things that were declared to be true about Jesus and God the Father, and then draw conclusions. They pull together the details to make a doctrine called the Trinity. I mean, Jesus is also worshipped.
Hmm.
It's very clear he's worshipped. Only God gets worshipped in the Bible. Why is Jesus worshipped? And everybody else is upbraided for worshiping something or other than God. We see that in the book of Revelation. We see that in the Gospels. The disciples worship him. If it's so obvious, all of these characteristics. Now, you said they don't see it as a solution, not a problem. Here's how it works. The Trinity is a solution for us. If you don't accept the Trinity, then the problem applies to them
Yeah.
because now they have a contradiction they cannot resolve.
Right.
And for them to camp on one verse, they'd be better off by saying, we don't know what this one verse means when he says, my God, but we know all the others say clearly he is God, so we're just going to go with the majority of verses. No, what they do is they go with the minority
Yeah.
of verses. And
Well, and
anyway.
they would point to the Book of Mormon to clarify that, if there's contradictions, that's why Joseph Smith came along and he cleared up the contradictions on the nature of Jesus. So that's how they approached that part of any contradictions.
Okay, well, I
Yeah.
have another question. So then what they're saying is, here's a way I would put it. I said, wait, I'm confused now. I thought you told me the Bible is the inspired word of God. Yes, insofar as it's properly translated. I get it. Okay. But therefore, if it's God's word, can God make mistakes? No. Well, then how can there be contradictions in the documents you called God's word?
Yeah.
Maybe
that
Joseph
Smith would have to clear up. Yeah. That's
No,
a good point.
maybe, I mean, if God can make mistakes, then why didn't he make a mistake with Joseph Smith?
Yeah.
So, this idea that, they have to go back to Joseph Smith. No, I'd rather stick with John. Why ask Joseph Smith, who comes 2,000 years later, when John is speaking for himself and John was taught by Jesus directly?
Yeah.
And this is not disputed by any in the conversation. Even the LDS guys believe that. So why are we disputing? There it is. Let's just let John speak for himself. It's not a contradiction. We have no reason to believe, but there's a solution, and the solution is one they don't want to accept. So,
can I ask just really briefly? You mentioned earlier about Jesus as a man being, I guess, as humanity was created, and I guess I really never thought of it that way. I've always put it that Jesus added a human nature to his divine nature.
He did, but the human nature is a created nature.
Oh, okay. I guess I've just never thought of it that way.
Yeah.
So, okay, that makes complete sense.
All righty.
Hey, thanks, Greg. Have a great vacation. I appreciate your time.
All right, Liam, and that's Liam's. Okay, I'm talking to Dave in Reno. So,
yes, you are.
If you have maybe in July or August, after a few more episodes, you have an update, give me a call.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, good chatting with you. All right.
You too. Thanks, sir. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much. Okay, let's go to break, and then we'll get to Liam and Batavia, Illinois after that. All right, just a reminder, I will be on Focus on the Family broadcast on June 14th. What is that? Next week sometime, Monday, I think. And I'll be talking about tactics, and follow our social media, and the links and information will be there. It's not just the radio broadcast, but I guess they do video as well, because they were filming the whole time we were there. It was a lot of fun with them. So let's see, what else I wanted to mention. Oh, Stand to Reason's now on LinkedIn. And apparently you can search for STR, Stand to Reason, click follow workplace, or click follow to see updates on the latest apologetics content, and we'll be focusing on faith in the workplace, guidelines for the church, and how to be an apologist. So that's on LinkedIn. I'm a little bit like not very clever about that because I'm not too familiar with it, but I'm just reading what it says. So those of you who know about LinkedIn will know how that works. We're there now. So, and of course, coming up in September, towards the end of September, our first installment of this next series of reality, and really, really excited about having a full schedule after the slowdown because of, well, I don't like to say COVID. I think it's the politics of COVID, but in any event, that whole last year. So September 24th and 25th, we will be back in Southern California at Orange County's Calvary Chapel. We'll be in Seattle on October 15th and 16th. We'll be in Minneapolis in November 12th and 13th. And then in 2022, Dallas, February 25th and 26th. And Augusta, Georgia, April 22nd and 23rd. So we're looking at roughly the last weekend of each of those months to be in a different regional. And we're pretty close to covering the country with our regionals for this, our effort of passing the baton to the next generation. This is geared for middle schoolers and high schoolers. It is, I'm just telling you, it will be, if you haven't experienced reality yet or formerly as Rethink, this is the best apologetics conference, a youth conference, frankly, that they'll ever go to. Because we're not going to throw candy at them and pizza. We're going to give them substance, but they'll still have a good, fun time at the same time. They'll be learning a lot. Kids show up and rush to the front of the room to get the front seats there with the notebooks ready to go. And we have the best speakers on the planet that will be addressing the issues that matter to your young people today. From chaos to clarity is the theme for this time around, and we're going to be dealing with issues that they're going to be facing in high school and in college and preparing them to face the onslaught and help them be better ambassadors for Christ. So those are the STR realities coming up this next year. All right, time to go to Batavia, Illinois. And Liam, I'm trying to remember where Batavia is. Is that like northwest of Chicago?
It's about west. Do you know where Aurora is or Naperville?
What was that? Do I know where what?
Aurora or Naperville is?
Yeah, kind of. Well, Aurora's like straight west, a long way out, right?
Yeah. Well, you know Wheaton, right?
Yes, I do.
Wheaton
Hey,
College.
I graduated from high school in Elmhurst, York High School, 1968. So that's kind of roughly in the environs there, right?
Yeah, it's about 30 minutes away. I used to do Cutco sales, like selling kitchen knives, and I had an appointment up there.
Okay, all right.
I know where that area is.
So these were my stomping grounds half a century ago. So I just lose track of some of the details. But good to talk to you, Liam.
Thank you. Good to talk to you as well. I feel privileged. I get to send you off to your vacation.
That's right.
Vacation time real soon.
That's right. You're my aloha call.
So my question was, I had this conversation with my sister. Actually, it was kind of like in front of the whole family, but a while ago. I'm the only believer in my household, and we had this conversation just about abortion. I felt like I was giving a pretty good case for, against abortion. And my sister rang up this point, and I don't think it's like derails anything, but I just didn't really have a good way to answer it. And she was saying like, I feel like the only way, like the only reasonable cause for abortion is, if the mom's going to die in that situation.
That's what she said was her view, or did she say that was your view?
That's what she said her view was.
Oh, okay. Well, that's actually pretty commendable. If she thinks abortion is immoral in all these other circumstances, but allowable if a mother's life is genuinely in danger, that's pretty solid pro-life. I mean, some people there's questions you want to raise about her exception, but that's good. She's largely in your camp so far. Yeah.
And I just want to say I've been reading the Tactics, your book Tactics. I'm a fairly new Christian as well, so I'm on like chapter 7 right now, and I love the new perspective because I'd have these conversations with my family, and I'd always go in headstrong and try to bring in all these facts, and it just would go back and forth, and sooner or later my mom would just be blowing up at me because she's a Catholic over like the
I'm curious. I'm just curious. Why would your mom blow up at you if she's a Catholic? If she's Catholic, she's inclined to be pro-life, and if she's Catholic, she's going to be happy you're a Christian of some sort. Why would she be
Yeah.
angry at you? I'm not sure.
So she is Catholic, but and she raised me in the Catholic Church. But the more I kind of like dug in with like questions, I realized she was more so like Catholic was just like the title she held, but more so her beliefs were more so grounded in like New Age beliefs and that
Okay. So
all religions are the same. And,
which means she's not a Catholic anymore. Although Catholics think that the Catholic line now is that all religions ultimately lead to God through Christ, even if they don't believe in Christ. But anyway, I don't want to get off too much off topic just because of the time. So, are you interested in knowing how best to respond to your sister who says that abortion is acceptable if a mother's life is in danger? Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Well, this might surprise you a little bit. I'll nuance my response, but I agree with her in principle. But keep in mind, some will make the point that in this circumstance, it's not really even an abortion on par with others. It isn't like we're saying abortion is okay. This circumstance, first of all, let me qualify it. It is exceptionally rare when the growing child inside a mother, genuinely and actually threatens the life of the mother. It is exceptionally rare to happen. And many times when a mom says, I'm going to have my baby anyway, even if it costs me my life, she doesn't die. They both are fine. Okay, but let's just stipulate for the sake of discussion, for clarity, that in this particular case, abortion if the mother carries to term, then she will die. Okay, so now we have a circumstance in which if the mother dies, the baby's going to die. I mean, that's pretty much how it works, though not every time. If the mother dies in childbirth, but if she's carrying in a way that's threatening her life, if the mother dies, the baby's going to die too. So what you're facing is the possibility, or maybe the probability, of two corpses. You don't do anything, you're going to have two dead human beings. So what is the morally acceptable thing to do? You try to save a life. You save the life that you can. And in this case, to save the one life, you must take an action that takes another life. Okay? Now, in philosophy of ethics, this is the operational principle here is called the law of double effect. And that means you are taking an action you want to have one effect, and that is to save the life of the mother, and it has a second effect at the same time, taking the life of the child. The intention is to save the life of the mother, not to kill the baby. But killing the baby is the consequence of the effort to save the life of the mother. And because it's foreseen but not intended, it's morally acceptable to save the life of the mother. There's some strange sound going on in the background. Is that electronic? Are you walking?
Oh no! I'm outside. I'm walking back home.
Okay,
I'm actually in nature preserve.
Unless you're walking across the street at the moment, stop.
Okay.
Until we finish. If you're not yet across the street, keep going until you hit the curb. Okay, because it's really loud. Okay, so do you? Okay, you're fine now. So do you see the point? Here we have a situation where we're trying to save a life, and the only way we can save a life is to take a life. And if we don't take a life, we lose two. That's the equation we're facing. Okay, now what's important about this is why some people will say that's not even really an abortion in the way we normally think of it. The reason that this is, as I said, what we're doing is trying to save the life, not to take the life. And our intention, we are, in this case, we are treating both the mother and the child as fully valuable human beings. And there is a consequence that we know is going to result by saving the life of one, and that's the losing the life of another. Here's the best illustration I can think, very handy, is especially since D-Day was Sunday, it's June 6th, is on D-Day, tens of thousands of civilians died through the bombing of the Allied forces as they get ready to take the beach. Tens of thousands of civilians died. Okay. Were they trying to kill civilians? No, they were trying to soften up the beach so the invasion could take place so the rest of the country could be liberated. They knew that civilians were going to die, but they weren't intending to kill civilians. They were intending to soften the beaches up and make an invasion and rescue the entire country, which they eventually did. Okay, but they knew this would be the price they'd have to pay. And so it was a morally acceptable thing to do. And that is parallel to the circumstance that your sisters described. And that is, in the case of where we genuinely have a threat to the mother's life, then it is permissible to protect the mother, even if it means the act of protecting the mother costs the child its life. And we're not saying, by the way, in this case, that the child is less intrinsically valuable than the mother. They are both equally intrinsically valuable. But the mother, in virtue of being a mother and a wife and a member of a family and mother of other children, potentially, and member of the community, has additional value factors that the unborn child doesn't have. So when you kind of do the metrics on this, the calculus on this, there is a greater total value to the life of the mother between intrinsic value, which she shares with the child, and all the rest of the value she has to her husband and her family and her community. That means we should, if it's one or the other, we protect the life of the mother, if it comes to that. Now, it turns out, as I mentioned, many of the mothers are saying, I get that, but I'm willing to risk my life for the sake of my child. I'm going to carry it to term and take what comes. And many times when that happens, both of them survive. So anyway, we're dealing with this as an ethical issue proper, and that's the calculus of the ethical issue. So in principle, I agree with your sister.
Yeah, that makes sense to me, and that's kind of like where I was leaning towards, but I didn't want to like affirm
something wrong.
The view of abortion as well.
Well, what's nice, it is consistently pro-life, though, because we are treating both the unborn child and the mother as valuable human beings that they are.
Yeah, I guess the big like dividing line, you could almost say, is like in the case of any other abortion, the mother would be only saving her. I don't know what the word
quality
would be.
Of life.
Quality of life. That's
the bugaboo. And when people start talking about this, well, what about the life of the mom? Well, they don't mean the life of the mom, the biological survival of mom. They mean her comfort, her ease, her convenience. Well, that's never a good this is what criminals do. They kill other people to increase their comfort and their convenience and their ease. This isn't an appropriate reason that justifies killing an unborn child. Okay. Well, look, I'm out of time here, Liam. You saw me through right to the end. You're sending me on my vacation. I appreciate that. It was a great conversation I had with you. And I appreciate the final call here. That's it for this show. Next week, J. Warner Wallace. The following week, John Noyce. The following week, J. Warner Wallace. And the following week, yours truly once again. Till then, God keep you. Greg Koukl for Stand to Reason. Give them heaven. Bye-bye now.